Dear friends, you are with Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital. And those of you that have watched some of my videos and read my blogs or seen my podcasts, you're very familiar with me and you know that my quest is to talk about medical issues, health issues, medical problems that we face every day. Some of them might seem like very simple and easy to solve. Some of them are very difficult to solve, and some of them at the present time seem like with no answer whatsoever. And it is very important to understand the medical world, the health world, in order to procure a better way for us to be healthy. Because the rule of thumb of everything I say, my first objective of everything I share with you is to try to avoid you getting sick. This is like a pilot sitting on an airplane. If you have a storm in front of you and you can watch it in the radar, why do you keep going in that direction when you have the chance of going around it? And that's what I like to do in all these programs. I like to explore and explain what I know of a health problem, and to be able to hopefully guide you out of that problem to begin with. To me, that's the golden rule. That's the number one. That's the utmost possibility, that you avoid getting sick. And when you have an illness, then you have to learn how to manage it, how to approach it, how to distinguish it, how to diagnose it, etc., in order to have early diagnosis, early treatment, and best possible results. That's what I'm talking about. And in this case, I really want you to follow me, because I'm going to make a series of podcasts talking about a problem that worries us all, that has touched everybody's lives, and that at this time seems like hardly solved. I'm going to be talking about cancer. And I'm telling you I'm going to talk about cancer for a series of programs, because the subject is so vast, it's so immense, it's so worrisome, that I think it needs a lot more attention. And I have called this first segment Understanding Why. Understanding why there's cancer, why we get cancer, and why it's so dreadful, so bad, so devastating on everybody's lives. Not only on the patients, but on relatives, caretakers, and everybody alike. So, I'd like you to follow me, because these programs are going to be connected one to the other. And if you can get more information, if you can share this information with other people, I think it's going to be a great service to you, and it's going to be a great service to everybody around you. The more we know, the better off we are equipped to face health challenges, and first and foremost to remain healthy and go around the problem. But if we ever face a problem, we know how to do it. That's why I'd like you to follow me. I'm Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital, and we're going to be talking about understanding cancer. And I want to begin there because the war on cancer has been very frustrating, to say the least, in many cases, because there are a lot of misunderstandings around it. After all, we come from a medical experience that for the last 300, 400, even more years was facing the real problem with external invaders, with something foreign to us. And then we had abscesses, and we had infections, and we had deadly diseases at the time, like tuberculosis, pneumonia, gangrene, leprosy. We had a lot of terrible, dreadful diseases that were plaguing humanity. And after all those years of fighting with something that's foreign to our bodies, it just got very much in our brain, in our experience, to think every time we get sick that something around us happened. And this experience, when it came to cancer, didn't play well. That's why we started on the wrong note, with the wrong foot, all this fight. Because we were using our experience in foreign diseases or foreign originated diseases on the human body versus to an internal uprising of our own cells that start a complete distortion of the human physiology that can completely take over of our whole physiology, and that ultimately will destroy the body that created and fed the cancer. That's why it's important to make the difference. Once again, we're not facing any invader. We're not facing any foreign thing. We're looking at an internal uprising of a group of cells that begin an independent activity, independent from the whole consortium, the whole concert, the whole equilibrium that all our systems are provided with through hormones, through markers, through proteins, through genetic load, etc. They just get out of there. They just forget who they are and they start doing what they want. It is important to know that we could be making this type of cells every now and then simply because reproductive process is very complex. So glitches and problems can happen at any point in time. However, let's think, for example, at a body that's reproducing millions and millions and millions of cells. Think of one cell, which is what began in the womb, to a 6-foot guy, 220 pounds. You can see the difference. You can see this is one cell, and look at this guy. He grew. He created a lot of cells, and that means millions, if not billions, of cellular reproductions. And everything went well, everything went fantastic. And we understand, once again, that something could happen on the way from point A to point B. However, it doesn't happen. Why? Because this body of ours, which was really created in perfection, has a number of markers and indicators and concert directors, so to speak, that will tell each and every part of the body and where to go. And from one single cell, the body will be able to create many more cells, not only making more and more cells, but will be making different groups of cells. And we'll be creating cells that make the nervous system, and cells that make the muscle, and cells that will, in the future, will make the bones, and will create very sophisticated organs like the heart, or the eyes, or the kidneys, and everything again is in concert. Because a lot of these tracers and a lot of these hormones and a lot of these substances, which are actually marked on your genes, on the genetic load of your body, will tell each and every cell when to divide and when to stop dividing. How many cells to create, how many cells take to produce a liver, how many cells take to, etc. And we should be amazed, I don't know if you have thought of it, but how come we all of a sudden in the womb start creating a liver that will grow and grow and grow up to a certain point. And that certain point is a very well balanced amount of liver tissue versus the person we're going to be. If you're going to be bigger or smaller, there's going to be an equilibrium. And so will be with the heart and the brain and the kidneys and the skin and the bones, and everything in the body will grow and be created to a certain point where growth will stop. And then we will be on a continuum equilibrium of number of cells and size of organs that will continue hopefully throughout our lives. So we're going to be very well programmed on how to be created, how to be born, how to develop, and how to become who we are, always being healthy and enjoying our lives. Thanks to all that concert, all that equilibrium, all that genetic information that will let the body know how far it can go, how big it can grow, how many cells we need for this or for that, how to create blood and bones and nerves, etc. Isn't this a real miracle? It is. To me, it is an absolute real miracle. So that balance that we never think of is what we have overlooked when we talk about cancer. It is hard to understand how come this group of cells are going to develop into a big mass which becomes a tumor that eventually will spread through the body and will kill the patient. Well, we have to understand that part, because if we begin understanding that part, we're going to begin understanding where cancer comes from. So let's keep on talking about this. Just stay with me. You are with Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital. And we're talking today about cancer. But I'm not talking about cancer just as a medical subject. I'm trying to bring you to understand what is cancer. Because in this 21st century of ours, you can hardly find a real simple answer to that question. What is cancer? We don't have the answer. I don't have the answer. All I can tell you is what everybody is going to tell you. What characterizes cancer? What we see in a cancer? How we see a cancer patient? But what exactly is cancer? Is difficult to say. So we're trying to make an idea, we're trying to come to terms to understand cancer, because if we don't, we're going to be far from solving the problem. And actually that has been a problem for many years, for decades. I was telling you before that humans were used to face a number of diseases throughout history. They were very used to see mainly foreign invasions, microbial infections, I mean, in its own time, tuberculosis, pneumonia, abscesses, different types of parasites were the cause of death. Leprosy is a legendary disease. The Black Pest was killed a third of European population in its time. So we were used to see this sort of diseases where we had to look around. And it went very well with the medieval understanding of safety. Because in the medieval times, your biggest concern came from the outside. So we built castles, and we built fortifications, and we built all sorts of things to keep us safe. And as medicine progressed, we always tried to see where we could do that. Unfortunately, we discovered cleanliness, hygiene, and different things that kept us far from those microbial forms or parasite forms that were destroying our lives. And as we did, we started improving. As we did, we started living longer. And as we did, we saw the medical world and the doctor under a total different light. Why? Because they were giving us more and more answers. And there's this man, Lister, for example, who discovered that if you wash your hands, before every baby delivery, the chances of infection after partum were much lower, if not gone. So simple discoveries that brought mankind through big leaps of progress in health and so on. But as we were living longer and enjoying apparently good health, we started looking at a disease that was coming in and in and in that began killing people, and we didn't know where it came from. And that was cancer. And we didn't have any answers, and we were looking for the culprit. But we had this fixed idea of the microbial infection, of the foreign invader. And with that type of philosophy, well, we didn't progress a lot because we were looking in the wrong place. Even with the war on cancer and with the huge investment, we didn't make a real huge progress for many years because we were looking in the wrong way. Let's put it this way. If you're going in the wrong direction, if you're facing the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how fast you go. It doesn't matter how much you advance. You will never get to your destination. If you're facing the right way, every little step in that direction will get you closer from solving the problem. And that's what we have to think. And we have to think about it as the person that could have or has the cancer. I have to understand cancer in order to be able to help to solve the problem. It's that simple. And then again, and I will never get tired of insisting on it, the rule number one to beat cancer is to avoid it altogether. And we're going to talk about that because we're going to be talking on several programs about cancer because it's an all too important subject. to just go through it lightly or without helping you to understand where I want to go. We have cancers that are different, and that's what makes it a little bit confusing. Some people tell you cancer is not a disease. Cancer is actually hundreds of diseases. Cancer is not one problem, it's many different problems. And in a big way, that's absolutely not true. And once again, that has divided the efforts to fight cancer. Because we think of cancers thinking of the organ it comes from or the type of cancer that it is. It comes from a solid organ, or it's in the blood, or it's in the skin, or it's in different tissues. And they behave different because they come from different tissues. So a carcinoma that comes from a glandular cell will behave different than a sarcoma that might come from the muscle or from the bone. Yes, that's true. But if we keep thinking in that direction, then you say, where do I start? I have to think of lung, brain, kidney, bladder, skin cancers, and so forth. It becomes very confusing and very difficult to understand. So let's go to the practical thing. Number one, we have established that this is not a foreign problem. It is an internal uprising of a group of cells. If that's so, question number one, is that true for every single type of cancer? And the answer is yes. So, you say this might be 100 diseases. No. It might be one disease with very different phases that can mimic a lot of things depending on what cell it was originated from. But the core of the question is that it began as an internal uprising of a group of cells that started doing a number of things that cells should not do. Let's go little by little. One of the questions that we have in this sort of a subject is that we establish the fact that we go from one cell to many cells throughout our life, and we grow. We grow because the systems that control our cell production, our destruction of cells, produce a lot more cells than what we destroy. So we grow bigger, we grow heavier. When we reach a balance, the body looks after replacing damaged cells for new cells, but doesn't create a new contingency of cells. So we keep, hopefully, our size and weight for many years. And then again, those functions, those markers, those hormones will start telling the body it's time to slow down, and we start losing body mass, muscle mass, glands capacity, our skin grows drier, our health falls off, turns white, we start changing. But all throughout this period, when we grow, when we're stable, and when we are beginning to age, and even when we die, there's a balance. There's a concert. There's a number of things that happen, one in relationship to the other. We don't grow old just in our skin. We grow old in our colon, in our heart, in our muscles, in our joints. Talking about that, it makes harder to move, makes harder to bend, because our body is aging. But it happens to our whole body because there is miraculously, this miracle of concert of functions within the body that make that possible. Every time our body moves in concert with body creation, with cells creations, with cells destruction, with cell everything. So we keep everything according to a program. We're going to be healthy, or what we call healthy. Because when we grow older, well, we might not be the looks of health, however you function. We can do a lot of things. We can be self-sufficient in a lot of things. And that is the basic question. As long as we keep the equilibrium of cell function, cell life, cell destruction, and cell replacement, we're going to be in good shape. I hope you find this interesting, because there's more to say. I'm Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital, and I'm beginning this series on cancer, where I hope I can help you to understand what cancer is, and for the same thing, how you can prevent it, or diagnose it early, or fight it off. If you don't understand your enemy, you're not going to be successful. Understanding your enemy is the first rule of thumb. I mean, having intelligence to see what your enemy is doing, planning, equipping with. That is one huge tool. That's why governments and people, even individuals alike, spend a lot of time and effort trying to find out what that one that's against you is trying to do. It's like a chess game. You're trying to guess what is your enemy's next move in order to block it, and also in order for you to advance and finally checkmate. That is what we all expect when dealing with problems like cancer. We want to know our enemy. But if you look around, there's so little information about cancer that it's outstanding. I mean, we have spent billions of dollars on cancer research, and you can find millions of research papers that tell you about this and that about the cancer, but we still don't know what cancer is. So understanding cancer, to me, is the first rule of thumb in order to know what we're going to do if we ever have to face that challenge. Or better off, if we want to skip it altogether, go around it. Just glide around the storm and don't go through it. Don't face it straight up. And that's what my intention in this series of programs is. So I would ask you to follow me, to subscribe to this series of programs, so you can share them, you can watch them again, and you can think about them. Any questions, any comments you might have, you're more than welcome to post them to me. I'll be very happy to discuss with you. I'll be happy to give you my information. I'll be very happy to try to help you out. I might be learning a lot from you, but I hope you also learn something from all these casts. Well, we're talking about cancer, and we're talking what it is. And the most important thing is that we are going to try to group them all in one disease with very different characteristics. I don't share the view that cancer are 100 diseases, because they have very common, deadly traits that we cannot just forget them. They're there, and they're the most important traits of a cancer. So why should I choose to distinguish one cancer that has some hormonal activity over another one that causes bone fractures. No, I'm trying to group them in what is very common to a cancer. What all cancers share. And I'm going to begin probably with what part of it I have already established, which is growth balance, which is one of the most obvious characteristics of cancer, not only to the doctor, but for the common people. Back in the Egyptian way, in the Romans, in the Greeks, they were talking about this. Actually, this is an ancient word. When we talk about tumor, as we many times describe a cancer, we're talking about a lump of cells, a mass of cells. We're talking about a lump, period. And then that lump is produced because this group of cells are deciding to go in a different way. That's why we call it an internal uprising. The balance for growth has been lost. The balance for equilibrium between one group of cells and the next, the neighbor cells or different organs, is lost. Why? Because cells reproduce because the influence of genes. We have genes that tell the cells divide. And those genes are called proto-oncogenes. And these proto-oncogenes will tell the body to grow when we're growing, or to stop growing when they stop their action. It's very simple. But these proto-oncogenes can be damaged. And we're going to talk about it in a different program. So these damaged oncogenes become what we call now oncogenes, that tell the cell divide and divide and divide and divide and pay no attention to what's happening around. So you have 2 cells, 4 cells, 16 cells, etc. You go in an exponential growth. And all of a sudden, of course, that small group of cells, or that cell, doesn't fit any longer in its own environment, and it begins to create a little lump, which is going to grow and grow and grow and grow, because it definitely will not stop at any point, and doesn't recognize that it should be in concert with the rest of the body. That gene has been managed. Has been damaged. There has been a mutation for that gene. So it will not function anymore. It's like the accelerator in your car that gets stuck. Even if you press on the brake, the car is going to keep on pushing. And that's what happens with cancer. We have seen it. A mass that grows and grows and grows. We have damaged that gene. But on the other hand, the same way we have genes that help you reproduce and make more cells, we have genes that produce the opposite effect. In the body, there are a lot of functions like that. You have one on, one off switch. And in this case, the off switch for growth, it's called the tumor suppressor genes. And those tumor suppressor genes will tell the body, stop making more cells. We have enough. You have the size you wanted. Everything is right. We don't need any more of you. Now, among these genes, there is one that has really caught the attention of science that you probably have heard of, which is referred as the P, capital P as in Peter, -53. The P53 gene is a very important gene because it checks the function of all the genes of the body. And if it finds a problem, then tells the cell, to repair the gene, and if it cannot repair the gene, it's going to tell the gene, then get out. And that getting out means apoptosis. Instruct the cells to destroy itself. And that cell starts becoming smaller, denser, and breaks out in little pieces that are going to be consumed by the macrophages in the body. And there's no trace that something very bad was happening there. Everything is clean. That p53 gene, from that standpoint, is a blessing. But p53 gene can also be damaged. Can be damaged by a number of things that, again, we're going to talk about that in a future program. But if it's mutated, it will not be able to do its job. So when you start a big growth of cells, it will not tell them to self-destroy as it happens normally. It is considered that we all produce abnormal cells throughout our lives, but the p53 gene that's overlooking the operation will tell the bad cell, you either repair or disappear. But if the p53 is not doing its job, then we have a problem. And it is so important because p53 damage has been identified in about half of all cancers of the blood or the body, of the gland, of the brain, or whatever. Half the cancers of the human body have a failure on the p53 gene. That's why it has become so important. But you have to see this again as a miracle. We have genes that will tell our body grow, and we have genes that will tell our body stop and keep a balance. We don't keep on making cells all the time. And when you say, well, what about adulthood? When I don't grow nor shrink, what's happening? Well, it's simple. You produce new cells, but as you produce new cells that are going to be young and filled with energy, the older cells are instructed to go away. And apoptosis is the way to do it. They simply shrink, break, they're phagocytized, removed, and a new cell will take its place. So everything looks normal. We don't even know about it. We don't even find about it. But you go every day, after you shower, you look at your balance, and hopefully you have the same weight. If you don't have the same weight, it's not because you have more cells. You know what is happening. So it means that there is an absolutely fantastic, beautiful balance of how we grow, how we keep our size and weight and everything in adulthood, and how our body will finally prepare itself to get out of the way, and just like with apoptosis, leave room for a new individual that hopefully will thrive and make everything around us function a lot better. That's one of the big important things, but there are more to say. Stay with me. You are with Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital, and you're in one of the segments that I'm doing talking about cancer. Understanding cancer, understanding why we get cancer, understanding how we can face cancer, how we can fight it off. This is very important information. So I please would love to see you following me and subscribing to this number of programs, because we're going to make a series of programs to discuss cancer, hopefully giving you much more information, much more elements to understand how you can bypass it, how you can face it. And that's very important. And we have mentioned a number of things about cancer. We have mentioned where it comes from, how it develops, and we have talked about the equilibrium that in a normal body exists between creation and destruction of cells, which is absolutely critical for growth, for keeping functions going, for making our body function always well, and even to usher us out of this life in a very glorious way, with very little suffering and very little violence. So this is what we're talking about. When you have a group of cells uprising and creating a big problem because of mainly gene disruption that can be produced by mutation in very important genes that will speed creation of cells or that will block the normal destruction of abnormal cells, then we are in a problem. We have a problem. And there is a second part to it. Number one we mentioned was growth balance. The second was or is immortality of cells. Does this mean cancer cells are immortal? No, obviously not. Nothing in the human body is immortal. What it refers to is that normally cells can only reproduce so many times. A cell can make next generation, next generation, next generation. But there are endings on all the genetic codes that are called telomeres. And those telomeres will measure the number of times the cell can divide. And every time you divide a cell, that telomere will become smaller and smaller and smaller until it can no longer allow for a new division of cells. And when that stops, the cell will be destroyed once again through apoptosis, and you have to get a new cell. Why a new cell? Why the old cell doesn't have any more telomere to reproduce, and the new cell comes with a long, healthy, new telomere chain? Where the cell is coming from? Well, it comes from the stem cells. We have an enzyme in the body that allows telomeres to grow. So the cell can divide and divide and divide and divide for as long as this telomere lasts. But these cells are not, this telomerase, this enzyme that allows the telomere to grow, is not universal to every cell. But it exists in 3 types of cells. So those cells can reproduce in a different way. One is gametes, in other words, the spermatozoid and the ovule from the ovary, because it's going to need to reproduce a lot of times. It's going to create a new individual. So telomerase allows these cells to keep making longer and longer telomeres so they can reproduce and reproduce and reproduce and create a huge number of generations of cells. The other type of cell is the stem cell. Why? Because the stem cell is created to replace cells in every damaged part of the body. So what you're going to do is you are going to send a new cell with a long telomere, with a telomerized possibility, so it's going to create all these cells you need to replace a damaged area. Let's say you have a bone fracture. Let's say you're in a car accident. Let's say you have a burn. Let's say you have whatever. That is going to send stem cells that are going to reproduce fast and effectively to heal the problem. And the third case is cancer. These cells can elongate their telomeres because they have telomerase. So they can produce endless generations of cells, which is another big trick under the sleeve that cancer cells have. They offer virtually no chance to being destroyed. First, the normal internal mechanisms of self-destruction do not exist or are blocked, and now they can produce endless generations of cells. And let's go to the most important part of cancer behavior, the worst of them all. A cancer cell can separate once again through biochemical tricks from the original tumor, enter the bloodstream, enter the lymph system, and travel throughout our body and go to a different organ. Leave the blood, leave the lymph, nest in a new part of the body, and create a new tumor. That's called metastasis. And metastatic disease kills 90% of cancers. If cancer does not metastasize, it's a lot easier to control. But when cancer becomes metastatic, it becomes a real problem. That's why it is important. And here I have to say something. Even though the full mechanism of metastatic propagation is not totally described or understood, there's one situation that's very much under control that can help that to happen, and that is inflammation. The inflammation environment is a pro-cancer condition. Why? Because the factors that intervene in an inflammation can produce inhibition of apoptosis, can induce abnormal cellular growth, can block cell destruction, can enhance cell survival. Sounds familiar? Everything we have said about cancer has these conditions. So inflammation, even though it's a life-saving mechanism of life protection, it should act and disappear. If you get a fracture, once it's healed, it should disappear. The inflammatory environment should not be part of your healthy life. If you have inflammation, you have to solve the problem and get rid of it. But what's worse, we have an inflammatory environment many times produced by simple things, like sugar, like cigarette smoke, like lack of physical activity. And all these conditions that I'm mentioning are connected to cancer frequency. So, I have said it many times. If you have lung cancer and you do not stop smoking, you're only helping the cancer to propagate to different organs. So many people say, well, I already have lung cancer. What's the use of stop smoking? Because you want to clear the chronic inflammation in your body. So toxics like cigarette, like alcohol, like drugs, like all these things do not belong in the body. Don't do them. And if you have cancer, you have to be more careful about it. Refined carbs, sugar, we know all of them are pro-inflammatory. Vegetable oils, don't do them. Learn about it. Call me, ask me. I'll be happy to help you. I'll be happy to guide you to information. Because if you don't do it, that inflammatory environment is going to help the cancer to survive, and it's going to help the cancer to spread. It's been described for as long as I have been a doctor that a cancer patient shouldn't have sugar. Well, we now begin to understand why. It used to be somebody said it, somebody has seen it, but now we have a clear-cut explanation. Furthermore, if you give cancer therapy, the inflammatory environment can block the effectiveness of the drugs or the treatments that you're doing. BioCare Hospital has an anti-inflammatory environment altogether. What you eat, what you drink, what you breathe, oxidative therapies, ozone, hyperbaric oxygen, cleansing of the blood, establishing all sorts of health for your intestinal gut. All these things are very important, and just by themselves can make your body work in a different direction. And everything that I have told you in this podcast will hopefully explain you and help you understand why. So it's very important that we take this into consideration. If you go to BioCare's webpage, if you call me, if you send me an email, if you ask me, if you look around at the web, you're going to see that anti-inflammatory strategies are absolutely crucial and fundamental and simple to do when you want to face cancer. So there are a lot more things to talk about cancer, and it's an all too important subject to put it aside. So I want to see you in the next program.